Okay, Mojaloop evolution workstream. So some time ago, we formed this workstream to act as a think tank, a focus of activities and thinking around the future of the Mojaloop codebase. There's been significant input from community, adopters, users over the past years on Mojaloop. And sometimes that activity can appear to be a little fragmented. And although we have the design authority and the technical governing board who steer the overall direction of the product from a technical perspective, forming this workstream has given us an opportunity to have those more philosophical, deep technical architectural discussions in a focused forum, and record the thinking and the cross-cutting concerns that engineering and maintaining a complex, large code base and platform like Mojaloop is. So over the last PI, we have been focused on a few activities specifically, the largest and most significant of which is the integration of the Tiger Beetle database as our main core financial ledger. In a few minutes, I'll hand over to Lewis Daly from Tiger Beetle, who will give you a detailed update on the work that's been going on. For those of you who are not familiar with Tiger Beetle, I would highly recommend that you take a look at their website. It's a very interesting, dynamic website. I would highly recommend that you go and read the docs to understand what Tiger Beetle is, its huge strengths and advantages over more traditional RDBMS-based ledgers, which the current Mojaloop codebase makes use of. You will have seen, hopefully, in the performance white paper discussion yesterday, that the performance of the Mojaloop platform is relatively impressive at the moment. You will have seen 4,000 transactions per second being achieved on 2 middle-of-the-road Amazon EC2 nodes. But we have ambitions way beyond that. And as well as improving the overall throughput on a given hardware profile, not the least significant benefit of doing that is to reduce the overall total cost of ownership of the platform. If you can squeeze the same performance out of smaller, cheaper hardware, then operating a Mojaloop-based scheme becomes cheaper. It helps push down the cost per transfer, which has a highly beneficial effect on financial inclusion. As well as the Tiger Beetle initiative, we've been doing some thinking around our chart of accounts. So in the Mojaloop platform, in our databases, we represent a traditional accounting chart of accounts. And the structure of those accounts, for those of you who have any knowledge or experience with accounting, can become complex in a system where lots of transfers of value are incoming and outgoing. Those transfers pass through a number of different internal accounts, and those accounts have to reflect a structure that is understandable by auditors who are themselves looking for correlation to standard accounting practices. Michael Richards is going to be talking about that in detail later on today, so I would highly recommend that you tune in to his show. Michael does a really good job of making the slightly dry subject of accounts interesting and enjoyable to talk about and listen to. So try not to miss that this afternoon. We have been doing some thinking on our authentication and authorization architecture. Some work that was done in the community probably 18 months ago now has made us ask questions about whether our current authentication, authorization approach is the best we could possibly have. Some alternatives have been proposed, and so we've had a number of deep discussions in the design authority and wider to try and figure out if we want to make any changes to what we have at the moment. We've also been looking at our audit trail. There goes a little bit more detail on our current focus. The audit trail, again, a current adoption project has raised some discussion points in the design authority about the nature of how we do our audit trail. Right now, there's an awful lot of things that happen in the Mojaloop system for every transfer that passes through the platform. And a significant number of those events are captured and recorded in an indelible way in an audit trail that would allow a forensic examination of the sequence of events that happened behind a particular movement of funds. But during an implementation project, some questions were raised about whether we could improve the efficiency of that system, particularly around the need to store a very large amount of structured and unstructured data. So we've been having some in-depth discussions in the DA around that. In this deck, again, these decks are all shared after the event, and these links will be easily accessible. So if you want to have a read up on any of the details of the discussion, we keep pretty detailed minutes in the design authority about the discussions that happen. I've given some links to the 2 tickets there. So if you want to have a read through the discussion and understand the basis of the decisions and where we are with those, then please, by all means, go and have a read of those tickets. So now, without further ado, I will hand over to Lewis. Lewis, are you there?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me back again. It's great to be here. And thanks, James, and Michael as well. So today I just want to share a little update with you on what we've been working on the Tiger Beetle side of things. And when I say little update, I do mean little update, not very much to talk about. So James has given us a bit of the background already around Tiger Beetle, so I probably don't need to go into details here. Maybe just 2 things to stress is that there's databases and then there's databases. So Tiger Beetle's a transaction processing database. And when we put in Tiger Beetle into Mojaloop, which is what I'm working on now, that doesn't mean all the other databases or the other existing database goes away. And this is just for the thin slice of business logic related to transaction processing. So there's other multi-purpose general purpose databases, the MySQL database, that will remain untouched. And we're just figuring out right now how to kind of draw the line and what data to store where. And just to recap from last time as well, what we did do a demo was we did see the very first kind of performance preview with a 27x speed up on the same or equivalent hardware from what we saw last time. So a little progress update is that the work is ongoing. And the main thing I do want to share with you today is a little bit about a new test that I've been working on called deterministic simulation testing. So following the principle of defense in depth, we're going to add working on a new test that's going to slot in alongside of our existing tests. So you might know, for the more technically minded, we have unit tests, integration tests. We've got the testing toolkit as well, which exercises end-to-end test use cases. And now we're adding this new test, which helps us to randomly explore the state space of Mojaloop. That's what deterministic simulation is. So we have a simulation. We set up a Mojaloop switch, and then we set up simulated DFSPs and a hub operator. And it's like a multiplayer game. They each do actions on each turn. So they all take turns around the circle doing different things, sending different Mojaloop API calls. One of the things with the Tiger Beetle integration is that the accounts structure that James was just talking about affects 3 different APIs inside of Mojaloop. It affects the FSP OOP API, so that's the Mojaloop API transfers going back and forth. But it also affects the admin API, sorry, which is managing accounts, onboarding the FSPs, funds in, funds out, as well as settlements, which is tracking the relationship or tracking the obligations that DFSPs have with one another, and then recording when those obligations are have been eliminated. What's the right word? When those obligations have been met. So there's 3 APIs we need to touch, and we have these different actors in the simulation, all making different API calls of these 3 different APIs. And the idea is that we can take a random walk through the state space of Mojaloop, and after each round, we can check to see, does the state that we expected, does the DFSP says, I owe all of the other parties in the switch 10,000 whatevers. If I owe all the other parties 10,000, do all the other parties agree that they are owed 10,000? So we confirm that each of the simulations has exactly the same view of reality as what the Mojaloop switch has. And the same goes for the sets of messages. So what the expected messages that were sent back and forth between the DFSPs and the switch, are they exactly what we expected based on the Mojaloop specification? And the critical thing is that it's a pseudo-random sort of simulation. So each of these different actors in the simulation can step through a sequence of events, but when we provide a different seed, like a first number, randomly generated number, we get a different set of outcomes. So you can see here our example, we have a different seed, and then these are our different actions. So when we provide this seed, the first step is for DFSP A to send 100 to DFSP B. And then DFSP B sends 10 to DFSP C. Hopefully you kind of get the idea. We put in a different seed and we exercise a whole different random set of the Mojaloop state. But when we put in the same seed, we get exactly the same. So this is why it's called deterministic simulation testing. We run into the same sequence of events, and then what that lets us do is run the whole simulation, look for failures, look for these situations where maybe the messages don't line up. We look for the situations where maybe the state between the DFSPs and Mojaloop don't agree, and then we can throw a failure. And what we can do is then run this simulation 1,000 instances of it at a time, or we can run it 24/7. So this is part of what Tiger Beetle does with our testing of our own databases. We run 1,000 Tiger Beetles all at once, 24/7, looking for different failures. And we're gonna, using similar principles, be able to do the same thing with Mojaloop. Walk through the state space, look for failures, and then when we find the failures, we can report those failures. We can then keep on running this test over and over again until we've fixed the code, and then once it passes, then we know that we fixed the bug. So that's what I've been working on at this stage, alongside of other things. But that was just a little of some of the stuff that's been going on with the Tiger Beetle integration. So that's all I've got. James, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Lewis. Thanks. Yeah, the testing that's going on as part of this migration is super critical, because we're replacing a really important core piece of the Mojaloop puzzle, the place where we record the money, where the money is. We're taking a great deal of care to make sure that we don't break anything along the way. It is a time-consuming process. It does require a great deal of careful effort, and we're very grateful to Tiger Beetle for donating Lewis's time, and we're also very grateful to Lewis for having dedicated so much of his brain space to this for us. Thanks, Lewis. So what are we going to be focusing on this coming PI? Well, obviously we'd like to complete that integration with Tiger Beetle, but as Lewis says, we're still exploring a few areas, deciding where to make the cut between the existing MySQL data stores for transaction data and Tiger Beetle. Hopefully, once we're clear, in theory, it's just typing, but as anyone who's involved in software engineering will know, it's never quite as simple as that. But it's certainly our top priority in this work stream for the coming PI. We'll be doing our best to support that. Our second priority, as I mentioned, we were discussing the audit trail. We have some open questions at the moment that came up during the DA discussions. And we kind of figured that the best people to ask were the people who would be using the audit trail to conduct audits. So we have some folks who've gone out to speak to regulators in various territories globally to try to understand what kind of requirements they would have, what they typically would need to be able to see, and the type of interfaces that they would need. We'll then be comparing that with our current product offering, the capability and features that we have, and if there's any changes that we might want to bring, we'll be figuring out a plan with the DA about how to implement those. I've said necessary architectural changes there, mainly because we still have an open question about what the right storage technology is for audit trail. Traditional DBMS might not be the best thing. Blob storage might not be the best thing. There are some special requirements for audit trail data around immutability and tamper detection. So if you store an audit trail record, you need to be sure that it hasn't been tampered with when you come to look at it again. As part of, say, a forensic investigation, you need to be able to tell whether somebody's possibly tampered with that record, whether it's trustworthy or not. So that makes the choice of data store slightly complicated. But assuming we can get that out of the way in the coming weeks, we'll spend the rest of our time looking at the other plethora of input that we have in this work stream on suggestions for improvement and efficiencies, that feedback we get from the development community quite regularly on suggestions for improving. As a complex system evolves, very often certain optimizations might become apparent. And we do our best over time to try to keep the system as simple and coherent as possible. So it's an ongoing process. Right, I realize I'm coming up close to my time. So I just want to say finally that if you want to get involved in this work stream, we're very, very receptive, happy and friendly, and we would love to have input from anybody. We have a Slack channel on Mojaloop Slack, WS Mojaloop Evolution. Please reach out to us. We have a weekly sync up meeting for everybody who wants to participate. Those happen on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. UTC. We also have a working notes document, which you can go and have a look at. This is linked from the Slack channel. It's a pinned post in the Slack channel, has a link to this document where you can go and read back through the minutes of all the meetings we've had to date in the work stream, various discussion points, decisions that have been made, etc. You also find links to external documents in there that will hopefully inform you as to the type of things that we've been talking about and how our decisions are made.